Good evening. Welcome to the April 26, 2017 budget hearing for the Lawrence Public Schools. At this time, we'd ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please have a seat. At this time, we'd ask that we observe a moment of silence for our troops serving overseas. Thank you and good evening. Good evening, Mayor, committee members. A reminder that the official school committee will start after this budget hearing. In this budget hearing, we will present the proposed budget for fiscal year 18. And then we will allow the public to make any comments. Folks will have 2 minutes to make comments. We will not be taking questions from the school committee until we close the budget hearing and then open up the school committee meeting. So please save your questions till then, if you so choose. I would also remind the school committee that because this is a work in progress at Beacon Hill, and the numbers don't get finalized till June, you will have additional opportunities in May and June to ask budget questions. With that said, we'd like to begin the presentation. Dave, will you be running the slides for me? Christine is running the slides for me? Okay. As I said, final numbers won't be determined from Beacon Hill till later in May or June. With that said, the initial estimates that we get, which will ultimately be reconciled by the different branches on Beacon Hill, are available. And so we have a decent projection of where we're at. That's what we'd like to talk to you about tonight. The budget priorities you'll see later this evening include Phase 3 of the high school campus transformation, which includes everything from the new pathway designations for our upper school students, as well as the work-study internship component that we're bringing to the high school, as well as the early college model. Some of you may remember that we have just secured funding from an outside foundation for approximately 300 of our students to get early college credit, either at Northern Essex or at Merrimack College. So that high school work will continue, as will expanded learning time in grades K through 8. And the campus next year will also have a longer school day through different types of opportunities, be it these internships I spoke of, community service work, and other educational hours that will count towards the longer school day. And the headmaster will be available later in the year to flesh that out for you in more detail again as he makes regular appearances here. The budget is also focused on our community and family engagement work. We've put a lot of effort into our centralized enrollment process, and registration is starting earlier this year. I would remind everyone at home that the registration process, particularly for pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, starts as early as May 1st. And so we're really trying to ask parents to come in between May 1st and June 30th to get ahead of this if possible. Obviously, the more kids we get registered sooner, the better it is for the school system, where it becomes more difficult, people trying to register at the last minute in August. So once again, please put the word out that starting May 1st, we will be doing our early registration for kindergarten and pre-kindergarten spots. And I think finally, the last big thing that you should know about our initiatives for the coming year are our school-based decision-making, where we allow schools to kind of tailor their curriculum, make their calendars, set up their own professional development, and set their budgets according to their individual school needs. In many cases, the principals are kind of the leaders of this school district, and they, working with their families and their staff, their teachers, will set up what's best for their particularly educational environment. So that is kind of the overview of what we're working on and as we go forward. If I could we're at the next slide. What you see before you is Lawrence's net school spending requirement. To place this budget in context for you, 95% of the money that it takes to run the Lawrence Public Schools comes from the state. It does not come from the local taxes. It does not come from the city. So 95% of the money that is required to run the school system comes from outside of the state. This is the highest amount highest percentage in any district in Massachusetts. As such, we are asked locally to contribute the least amount of any district. Only 4.72% is what they say our required minimum contribution is. So what we're seeing here is that when you compare us to other kind of gateway cities, you see our local contribution is at only 4.72%. The next lowest city is Springfield, which actually has to kick in 10.29%, and that goes all the way up to Lowell, which has to contribute 24.37%. And so obviously we are asked to contribute the least amount as a city towards the education of our youngsters. But that is just that. It's only a least amount. Most school districts, in fact, in Massachusetts, nearly all school districts give above the state's minimum ceiling. And so when you look at this chart, you see that all of these school districts go above that minimum formula. Salem goes 40% above its minimum required formula. Boston gives 18.7% above it. Haverhill gives almost 5% above it. Chelsea gives 1.4% above it. But in Lawrence, we're basically at the minimum, or actually this year slightly below the minimum. And this is something that, for the first 5 years that I've been here, we have recognized the tight financial situation. But as Lawrence has been able to dig itself out and has developed, in fact, a large surplus, we're asking that we not be the school district that is funded the least amount by the city, and that folks give us some additional resources, because last year we had to make some pretty extreme cuts, almost $4 million. We set out to protect the classroom, that is, to not change the student's experience. We cut more at central office. We had efficiencies with light bulbs. We did everything we could to shave dollars off. But that's, this year, if the budget continues and we're given the minimum net school spending, the impact will be much greater, and it will impact the classroom. Teachers will be laid off, paraprofessionals may be laid off, all different employees of the school system could be laid off. And so we're here before you today to say that we're asking for above the minimum net school spending number for the first time in my history, but not at the average, which is, again, is 23.7% is what your average city or town spends above it. We're only asking for 1.5% above that minimum number. And even by doing that, we'll still have to make cuts. We're willing to make, almost $1.5 million worth of cuts, but we're in a situation now, if we can't convince the city to provide more money for us, that we will be struggling. Our allocation is, again, that 4.7%, that's 100% of net school spending is what they call it, plus 1.5%. So we're asking for the minimum plus $2.5 million, which, taken with a $1.7 million cut from us at the school department, will balance the budget and allow us to continue to offer the same services we offered this year. This will minimize the impact of direct services to kids. We're also asking the city to pick up the cost for school leases, which are a municipal obligation after a certain amount of years. So the Phoenix Academy, the Lawrence Family Academy, and the Family Resource Center also have leases that we're going to ask the city to be picking up. As I said, we've never asked for above the minimum number in the 5 years that I've been here. I think we've been incredibly efficient with our funding. Test scores have been up to historic levels. Graduation rate is up 20 plus points. The dropout rate has been cut in half. I've done a lot of fundraising to try to make sure that our kids get extra things that they need. But we're in a situation right now where we're going to be asking the city for additional assistance. We don't have specific numbers for what the positions or what's going to happen with the cuts, but if the number does materialize and we have to make the cuts, we will be coming back to the school committee later to apprise you of what the impact will be. With that said, I'm going to turn it over to Vivian Haydar and Dr. Mary Lou Bergeron, who are going to go into kind of detail on the fiscal 18 budget. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Good evening. The first question most people ask is, how is the budget determined? And the way it's determined is a formula that the state created years back called the foundation budget. And basically that's the state telling every municipality what is an adequate minimum level of spending for all public school students all over the state. The amount spending is determined by a state formula that varies based on the student's need. So it basically tells you gives you a number for teacher salaries, benefits, supplies, curriculum, school staff, special education, and other various factors. This foundation budget number does not include adult education, and it does not include transportation, nor does it include school building capital needs. Two factors determine how the state comes up with the foundation budget for each city and town. Number one is the enrollment. They use the enrollment from the prior year, October 1st. So for example, for this fiscal year coming up of FY18, they use the number of October 1st, 2016. So if you look at the chart, oh, sorry.
Okay, no,
Okay. So basically, if we had a dip in student enrollment in FY17, but then this year, it's increased by 372 students. The second factor they use to come up with the foundation number is they basically multiply the enrollment number from the prior page, and they count it by per pupil rate for different student characteristics and adjust it for inflation factor. So for Lawrence, they're saying it's going to be a cost of $12,357 per student. And if you look at the prior year, it's only increased slightly. It's only increased by $43 per student. So once we're giving that number, the foundation budget number, for Lawrence, it's $189,203,876. So we take that number, and then we need to deduct from it the city qualifying costs. Those costs are administration fees. Basically, those are the fees that the city handles, our payroll, the accounts payable, all things finance, maintenance of buildings, and that aren't covered by our maintenance, so that's anything above and beyond, and employee benefits. In addition to that, they have to take a deduction for the charter and choice school. When you come to the total of that, it's 21 million and change, so you reduce it from the foundation budget number, you're left with the appropriation of 167,000. And as stated prior, they're responsible for transportation and adult education, so you add that back, and that's how you come up with the number for the general fund of 177,834,680.
million.
I mean, sorry, million. Wishful thinking, right? The next page is about charter and choice calculation. Here it'll tell you how many students are enrolled in school choice and how much it costs, as well as charter schools. That $22 million number from the prior page is composed of those numbers, as well as special education assessment.
The city then, you'll see in the 2 million, there's 2.3 million there. The city gets a reimbursement for a portion of the charter enrollment. So it's a situation where the first year they'll reimburse 100% for brand new students, and then every year it decreases down. So the city takes that 2.3 million off their overall assessment to get to the 19.8 million that they actually take off of our local allocation.
So every year, Lawrence Public Schools receives money from two sources. City of Lawrence basically is recommended by the mayor and approved by city council, and the budget is often referred to as our budget appropriation. And secondly, of course, state and federal grants. And you'll see in the coming pages, this year we've lost some grants. So if you look at the comparison from last year to this upcoming year, we have an increase of 1.5 million from last year in general fund. But if you look at the grants, you'll see that we've lost almost $1 million. So the variance is only $743,000. And the problem this year is all expenses have increased, and that's, if you look at that small amount that's increased in revenue, this is why we're dealing with such a deficit this year. How do the schools spend the money once the budget is completed? Each school has autonomy. At the principal level, working with the teacher leaders, they basically have the capability of allocating the funds how they see fit for their school, as long as they stay within the allocation. We have the schools, they are allowed to hire staff and recoup any funds up until the fiscal year ending, and then they can reallocate those funds to other allocations within their budget. For non-salary budgets, though, we did level funding from FY17 to FY18. When you go through the budget and you inquire why did they change from last year to this year, we need to remember that it was a snapshot in time from once the budget was proposed last year. Things changed throughout the year, so you would see different line items.
Particularly with school autonomy, if they hired a staff member that came in at a different rate, and they might be able to then hire another person that would offset that within their budget, they did that. Or if they found that they needed additional resources, they may have moved money this year and say, okay, I'm not going to use this part-time person I used to have because I need this resource. So they make those adjustments as they go through the year. And when we asked for our 1.5% increase, that 1.5% was on the $167 million component, which would have been our school committee allocation. It does not include what the city's pieces for transportation or adult ed requirement. So the 1.5, we're asking that $2.5 million is on the $167 million that would have been the school committee's appropriation at net school spending. So that's our, yeah. So that's the overview of kind of how we got to our figures, what the requirements are, and I know that the budget book has been posted online and available to school committee in terms of any other things that people might be wanting to have comments or share comments about.
This time, we're going to move to public participation. If there are folks that want to get up and speak about the proposed budget, they're more than welcome to do so at this time. Joan is going to help shepherd that process through. Mr. Marley, would you like to lead us off?
It's open, they can get up as they see fit.
Good evening, honorable members. After 35 years as a citizen and parent, proud since the advent of the turnaround plan and arrival of Honorable Superintendent Raleigh, Lawrence Public School budget is the most student-focused budget. While empowering our immigrants' parents to be an able partner in creating the best education, also focuses on creating a best education for our children. But we need to make sure that our best teachers and the union are happy. We don't want that they leave our city for the neighboring city for higher wages. So we have to make sure the least amount of number of our teachers being laid off this year. The Lawrence Public Schools budget is the most important budget, not only helping operation of our public schools, also creating the best future for our children. So we need to support this budget by enabling our citizens to be a best partner to supporting our public schools. Thank you.
Mr. Marley. Any other parents or anyone else who would like to speak?
Good evening. So I am here as a parent, obviously a concerned parent who wants to see nothing but the best come of our city and our public schools. And what I'm asking, I'm not going to add to their presentation. Clearly, they know what they're talking about. As a resident, as a homeowner, as a parent, I'm asking the city to support our kids and do what needs to be done to help them get to the next level. We talk about them being important, being basically, the next generation that's going to lead not only our city, but are going to be members of our community. And in order to do what needs to be done, we do need to put the money where our talk is. Our kids need to be supported. Our school principals need to be supported. We can't afford any more cuts. I had pulled my children out of the public school system right before the announcement that Mr. Riley was coming in, and one of them has yet to come back to the school system. Lots of improvements have taken place. I do have a daughter within the public school system, very happy with where she's at, but the reality is that based on where we were when we started and where we are now, there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. And I would hate to see any of the effort that has been put forth, any of the dedication on behalf of everybody that has contributed to this, from the lowest level to the highest levels, everybody working together for a common good, to go to waste. So I urge you to seriously take this into consideration and at the very least, support us and our community by contributing the minimum required at the very least, but definitely show good faith and step it up and add the additional 1.5% from wherever it needs to come. And I don't care if taxes need to be raised, but the money should be there in order to be able to support our kids and our community. Thank you.
Any other speakers tonight?
One of you going to translate for us?
Who's going to translate?
Mi nombre es Asia Mercado, y yo estoy aquí para representar al hijo mío que va a la Guimé, para pedirle por favor que ay, me pongo nerviosa.
No hay necesidad. Está bien.
Mi nombre es Asia Mercado y mi hija está en la Guilmé y yo vengo aquí para ahí. Arranque.
Para pedirle por favor que sin su ayuda no podemos ayudar a nuestros hijos a que no podemos aportar a que nuestros hijos sigan adelante, ya que ellos son el futuro del mañana.
I'm here to ask you please to support our children because they are the future.
Por favor, acuérdense que la educación de nuestros hijos es lo primordial y sin su ayuda, sin su contribución, no podemos seguir adelante. ¿Ok? Gracias.
Remember that education of our children is the most important thing. Without your help, we cannot continue.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Okay, any final speakers? Okay, Mayor, I'm going to call this budget hearing closed at this time. And at this time, we're going to start the Lawrence Public School School Committee meeting, Wednesday, April 26, 2017, with a call to order. We will do the salute to the flag once again. So at this time, I'd ask that you stand for the Pledge of
Just
Allegiance.
as a matter of protocol, do we have to, oh, you don't have to make a motion to close it and all that stuff, just to make sure we don't, the budget hearing?
We don't have to,
Well,
but
you-
we're
you
certainly, why don't we do it anyway, Mayor?
I just want to make sure we don't, like, keep it open and then there's a problem with.
Yeah,
the
because
meeting.
you closed, but yeah, you should probably do a vote.
Entertain a motion to close the public hearing on the budget. Motion's been made and made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye, the ayes have it.